Can you imagine a world where Captain America wasn't played by Chris Evans or where Iron Man wasn't Robert Downey Jr.? Sounds wild, right? Well, these alternate realities were closer than you think. In today's video, we're peeling back the curtain on Marvel's casting process to reveal the surprising what-ifs that could have changed the MCU forever. Stick around until the end, because this list is definitely going to shock you, especially the third one. That one might have been the biggest what-if on the list. Let's start with an actress we all know and love. Scarlett Johansson is practically synonymous with Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. Marvel fans adored her portrayal so much that she became one of the franchise's most iconic heroes. Her impact was so monumental that fans demanded a solo movie for her character. And I completely agree. Black Widow absolutely deserved her own film, and thankfully we got it. While it may not have been perfect, it was still great to see Natasha finally get her moment in the spotlight. But, to the surprise of many, including myself, Johansson wasn't Marvel's first choice for the role. Originally, the role of Natasha Romanoff was offered to Emily Blunt, known for her performances in The Devil Wears Prada and Edge of Tomorrow. Blunt reportedly came very close to stepping into the Black Widow's iconic leather suit, but ultimately had to decline due to scheduling conflicts. At the time, she was committed to another project, Gulliver's Travels, which prevented her from joining the MCU. Now, imagine for a moment how different Black Widow might have been with Blunt in the role. Would Natasha's close friendship with Clint Barton have felt as authentic? Would her subtle romantic tension with Bruce Banner have resonated in the same way? And what about the action scenes? Would Blunt's style have brought a different energy to the physicality of the character? Interestingly, this wasn't the last time Blunt came close to joining the MCU. She was also considered for the role of Peggy Carter in Captain America, the First Avenger. While that didn't work out either, it's clear Marvel recognized her potential to shine in their universe. Maybe we'll still have the chance to see her in future MCU movies. This next one might be breathtaking for hardcore Guardians of the Galaxy fans. Before he became the wisecracking, dance-loving leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, Chris Pratt wasn't the obvious choice to play Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord. In fact, Marvel initially struggled to cast the role, auditioning dozens of actors without finding the perfect match. Pratt himself wasn't even on their radar at first. Back in the early 2010s, Chris Pratt was primarily known as Andy Dwyer from Parks and Recreation, a lovable but goofy character who didn't exactly scream galactic hero. Pratt was also not in the superhero shape that Marvel often requires, and he wasn't seen as leading man material by many in the industry. Marvel tested a variety of actors for the role of Star-Lord, including big names like Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Joel Edgerton. Some sources even suggest that Marvel considered Zachary Levi before he took on a different Marvel role as Fandral in Thor: The Dark World. Still, none of these actors seemed to capture the blend of humor, charm, and vulnerability needed for Peter Quill. And Pratt was also reluctant to audition. He had been passed over for several major roles in the past, and felt that this one might be another disappointment. Fun fact, one of the roles he was passed on was Captain America, but I'll leave that for another video, maybe next week's video. So, if you don't want to miss it, make sure you subscribe and turn on the bell notifications. It almost seemed as though he wasn't destined to play Star-Lord. But director James Gunn saw something in Pratt that others had missed. Gunn believed that Pratt could bring a unique energy to Star-Lord. The turning point came when Pratt finally agreed to audition, and within seconds, Gunn was convinced. As Gunn put it, Chris was Star-Lord, and it was so obvious when we saw him. Once Guardians of the Galaxy hit theaters, any doubts about Pratt's casting evaporated. However, the road not taken always invites speculation. What if Joseph Gordon-Levitt had been cast? Would his more serious approach have changed the tone of the Guardians? These are questions that, fortunately, we don't know the answers to. Now, this one is definitely, in my opinion, the most mind-blowing case on the list. We all know Benedict Cumberbatch, right? The guy who plays the brilliant, cocky, and ultimately heroic Dr. Stephen Strange. Like almost every MCU actor, his name and face has literally become inseparable from the role. His portrayal of the Sorcerer Supreme has become iconic in the MCU. But did you know that Marvel Studios almost chose someone else to wear the mystical cloak of the Ancient One? But that's not the shocking part. The mind-blowing part is the person they wanted to cast as Doctor Strange. And it's mind-blowing because that person is none other than Joaquin Phoenix. The acclaimed actor was reportedly in talks to play Doctor Strange. Imagine a Doctor Strange played by the same actor who brought to life the hauntingly complex Arthur Fleck in Joker, or the deep, soulful Theodore in Her. At the time, the studio was looking for someone with the depth and intensity to carry a character who would need to balance arrogance with vulnerability. Someone who could grow from a self-centered neurosurgeon to a wise, mystical protector. And let's be honest, Joaquin Phoenix would have brought that intensity in spades. However, Phoenix reportedly passed on the role. Why? Well, it seems that he wasn't interested in committing to a long-running franchise. Marvel's interconnected universe was still a relatively new concept at the time, and the idea of being locked into a multi-film contract just didn't appeal to him. So instead, Marvel turned to Benedict Cumberbatch, who, let's face it, absolutely crushed the role. But what if Joaquin Phoenix had taken the role? Would he have brought his signature dark intensity to the character, perhaps making him more brooding and less humorous? Would Doctor Strange have had a completely different vibe, maybe even changing the tone of the entire MCU? We'll never know, but in a world full of what-ifs, it's hard not to wonder what the Sorcerer Supreme might have looked like under Phoenix's unique lens. Moving on to a case that left me absolutely breathless, because she's one of my favorite actresses ever, playing my favorite female character ever. I'm talking about Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff. Wanda Maximoff is one of the most powerful and complex characters in the MCU, brought to life brilliantly by Olsen. However, believe it or not, she wasn't Marvel's first choice for the role. Not only that, she was not considered the perfect person to play the role. Early in the casting process, the studio had its eyes on another rising star, Saoirse Ronan. At the time, Ronan was making waves in Hollywood with critically acclaimed performances in films like Atonement and The Lovely Bones. Her talent and ability to embody emotionally charged roles made her a strong contender for Wanda. In fact, Marvel's casting team even referred to her as their prototype for the character. But Ronan reportedly passed on the role, either due to scheduling conflicts or a lack of interest in committing to a long-term franchise. This opened the door for Elizabeth Olsen, who not only accepted the role, but completely made it her own. Olsen's portrayal of Wanda Maximoff is now regarded as one of the most nuanced performances in the MCU, seamlessly blending Wanda's immense power with her profound emotional struggles. Still, it's fascinating to imagine what the character might have looked like with Ronan in the role. But in the end, Elizabeth Olsen's performance has become so iconic that it's hard to picture anyone else wielding chaos magic. But for fans of what-ifs, Ronan's potential Scarlet Witch remains one of the most intriguing alternate realities in Marvel's casting history. I'm personally glad this is just a what-if scenario. In this next case, I'm not sure if you're going to feel relieved or disappointed, because I feel like most of you love the actor who almost played our beloved Drax. Now, I'm pretty sure 99% of you watching this video love Drax, and probably for the same reasons: his hilarious, no-filter personality and his fierce warrior spirit. And of course, he's played by none other than Dave Bautista. But, as with every other case on this list, Drax could have been very different. That's because he was almost played by someone else, specifically, the man who's become the face of aquatic warriors, Jason Momoa. Now imagine for a moment, Jason Momoa, known for his roles as Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones and Aquaman in the DC Universe, as Drax the Destroyer. It's not too far-fetched, right? Both characters are strong, imposing, and radiate that warrior energy. In the early stages of Guardians of the Galaxy casting, James Gunn was looking for someone who could embody Drax's physicality while also capturing the character's emotional depth. At first glance, Jason Momoa seemed like an obvious choice. He had the physique, the intense presence, and the acting experience to pull it off. So, why didn't it happen? Well, scheduling conflicts and career priorities played a huge part in the decision. In Momoa's own words, he didn't want to keep taking on roles where he barely spoke and spent most of the time shirtless. On top of that, he was deeply involved in other projects, including Game of Thrones and other career opportunities. And this is where Dave Bautista enters the picture. Just like with Star-Lord, James Gunn saw something in Bautista that others didn't: his ability to deliver Drax's raw emotion and humor while maintaining that tough, warrior-like exterior. Once Bautista was cast, he completely owned the role, bringing Drax to life in a way that resonated deeply with all of us. But here's the big question: what would Guardians of the Galaxy have looked like with Jason Momoa as Drax? Sure, Momoa could have brought a similar warrior energy, but would we have gotten those unforgettable moments like the wise Gamora line? It's hard to say. So, once again, congratulations, Marvel. You made the right choice. Now I want you to make a thought experiment with me, just like Einstein used to do to develop his groundbreaking theories. Let's think about Tony Stark for a moment. You agree with me that Robert Downey Jr.'s performance didn't just define the character. It became the cornerstone of the entire MCU, right? Now imagine for a moment if someone else had been cast in that role. Would Iron Man have had the same cultural impact? Would the MCU even be as successful as it is today? When we think of Iron Man, it's impossible to separate the character from Robert Downey Jr. His charisma, sharp humor, and emotional depth brought Tony Stark to life in a way that few actors could. I think you can guess what I will say next. Yes, RDJ wasn't Marvel's first choice for the role. Before Downey was cast, Marvel Studios considered a handful of other actors, some of whom might surprise you. Among them was Tom Cruise. Cruise had expressed interest in playing Tony Stark, and Marvel even engaged in discussions with him during the early development of Iron Man. Now, think about what that might have looked like. Cruise certainly had the star power and action experience to pull off the tech-savvy billionaire. But would his interpretation have captured the vulnerability and complexity that Downey brought to the table? Interestingly, Marvel didn't stop at Cruise. Other actors who reportedly auditioned for the role include Sam Rockwell, who later joined the MCU as Justin Hammer in Iron Man 2, and Timothy Olyphant, known for his roles in Justified and Deadwood. Both actors are immensely talented, but again, it's hard to imagine anyone but RDJ wearing the red and gold armor. What makes this story even more fascinating is how close Marvel came to missing out on Downey entirely. At the time, his past legal troubles made him a risky choice, and the studio faced significant pushback from insurers and stakeholders. But director Jon Favreau fought hard for RDJ, convinced that he was the only one who could truly embody Tony Stark. And well, the rest is history. But I must admit, it surprises me that Marvel, at that time, ended up choosing RDJ instead of Tom Cruise, who was definitely a safer choice. They definitely made a bold choice, but I'm glad things turned out the way they did. From Tom Cruise as Iron Man to Saoirse Ronan as Scarlet Witch, These near castings remind us how small decisions can have enormous ripple effects. So next time you see Thor wield Mjolnir or hear Doctor Strange utter an incantation, take a moment to appreciate the magic of casting. After all, in another universe, it might have been someone entirely different saying those lines. Now I want to hear from you. Which alternate casting would you have loved to see? Let the debates begin.